The morning alarm rang through New Hope Colony. Governor Allison Wright sighed as she rose from her bed. Another day of bad news waited for her. She looked out her window at the dome that protected their small city on Proxima Centauri. The red light of the alien sun made everything look strange, even after 15 years. "Governor, you're needed in the control room," said a voice through her door. It was Peter Collins, her assistant. "Another attack?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes. The farm's in Sector 7 this time." Allison dressed quickly and walked through the main corridor. People looked tired. They always looked tired now. Children who had been born on this planet had never known peace. The Vraxians had made sure of that. In the control room, John Carpenter stood at the main screen. John had been a soldier back on Earth before joining the colony mission. Now he was in charge of defense, though defense mostly meant watching their homes slowly get destroyed. "How bad?" Allison asked. "We lost 2 harvesters and a water pump," John said. 3 people injured. No deaths this time." "Small blessings," Allison whispered. The colony had been out of contact with Earth for 15 years. The quantum communication array had stopped receiving messages right after reports of war breaking out in the Sol system. Most colonists believed Earth had been destroyed, or that Earth had simply abandoned them. "The Vraxians are getting closer," said John, pointing to a map. "Their ships have been moving into positions around our moon. I think they're getting ready for something big." Across the room, Frank Nelson was working with the old quantum beacon. Every day for 15 years, he had sent the same message to Earth. New Hope Colony still stands. Request assistance. And every day for 15 years, there had been no answer. "Frank, don't you ever get tired?" asked Allison. "Someone has to keep trying," he said without looking up. "Earth might still be out there." John shook his head. "Even if Earth survived whatever happened back then, they're not coming. We're on our own out here." A loud alarm suddenly blared. Everyone in the control room froze. "Vraxian ships entering atmosphere," shouted Susan Miller from her monitoring station. 5. No, 7 small fighters. "Get everyone to the shelters," ordered Allison. "John, what can we do?" "We have 2 defense guns still working," he said, already moving toward the door. "I'll do what I can." Outside the colony dome, the sky turned dark as Vraxian ships flew overhead. They were strange-looking vessels with curved hulls that reminded Allison of giant insects. In orbit above the planet, Commander Skthar of the Vraxian Empire watched the human colony on his view screen. The pitiful settlement had resisted longer than expected, but soon it would fall. The humans were stubborn creatures, continuing to fight when there was no hope. "Prepare the main attack force," Skthar told his officers. "I want this finished within 10 sun cycles." "Commander," said his second-in-command, "should we not simply destroy them from orbit? Why send fighters?" "Because that is not our way," answered Skthar. "The humans must understand they are being conquered. They must see our ships and know we are superior. And we must confirm there is no Earth technology hidden in their colony that might be useful to us." Back in the colony, explosions shook the ground as the Vraxian ships fired at their defenses. One of their 2 guns went silent after taking a direct hit. In the shelter beneath the main building, Allison tried to comfort the frightened colonists. "We've survived this before," she told them. "We'll survive it again." But privately, she wondered how many more attacks they could endure. Their supplies were running low. Their equipment was failing, and Earth had forgotten them. In the communications room, Frank Nelson continued to send his daily message even as the building shook around him. "New Hope Colony still stands. Request assistance." He paused, then added words he hadn't used in years. "Situation critical." The Vraxian ships eventually left, having destroyed one more piece of the colony's fragile infrastructure. The colonists emerged from their shelters to assess the damage and make repairs. They had survived another day, but for how much longer? No one noticed the tiny light on the quantum beacon that began to blink for the first time in 15 years. Olivia Martinez stared at her scanner screen with a frown. The readings made no sense. For 3 days now, her instruments had been picking up strange gravitational distortions at the edge of the star system. As the colony's chief scientist, she knew their equipment was old and prone to errors, but these readings were consistent. "Benjamin, can you look at this?" she called to her assistant. Benjamin Harris set down his toolkit and walked over. At 32, he was one of the younger adults in the colony, having been only 17 when they lost contact with Earth. "Those can't be right," he said, looking at the screen. "Gravitational waves that size would mean something massive is out there." "I know. I've checked the equipment 3 times. Olivia took her findings to the Colony Council that afternoon. They met in what had once been a nice meeting room, but was now patched together with makeshift repairs after years of Vraxian attacks. "With all due respect, Dr. Martinez," said Council Member Richard Owen, "we have more important concerns than some strange readings. The Eastern Dome was damaged in yesterday's attack. Food production is down 12%. "I understand that," Olivia said. "But these readings could indicate something important." Governor Wright rubbed her tired eyes. "What exactly do you think it means?" "I don't know yet, but objects that create gravitational distortions this strong are usually very large. Either natural bodies like planets or ships." John Carpenter finished her sentence. The defense chief suddenly looked interested. "Yes," Olivia nodded. "Very large ships." Council member Nancy Powell laughed. "Earth ships, you mean? Earth abandoned us 15 years ago. They're not coming now." The meeting ended with the council telling Olivia to focus on more immediate problems, but she couldn't let it go. That night, she and Benjamin set up additional sensors around the colony. In orbit above the planet, the Vraxians had noticed the anomalies too. "These readings are unusual," said a Vraxian science officer. "Should we investigate further?" Commander Scathar studied the data. "No, they are merely stellar disturbances. Focus on our attack plans." But the next day, the Vraxian commander was not so certain. 2 scout ships sent to patrol the outer system had failed to report back. This was highly unusual. "Get me a full scan of the system," he ordered. On the planet below, Olivia and Benjamin worked through the night. Their new sensors picked up even stranger energy patterns. "These look like hyperspace ripples," Benjamin said, excitement in his voice, "similar to what our colony ships used to make when traveling between star systems." "But much bigger," Olivia added. "Whatever is causing this is enormous." They weren't the only ones who had noticed changes. John Carpenter called an emergency meeting the next morning. "The Vraxians are pulling back," he announced to the council. "Their forward positions around our moon have been abandoned. Their attack ships are regrouping." Governor Wright looked confused. Why would they do that? They were clearly preparing for a major assault. "Maybe they know something we don't," John replied. Frank Nelson burst into the room without knocking. His hands were shaking, and his face was pale. "The beacon," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The quantum beacon received a response. The room went silent. For 15 years, Frank had faithfully sent messages into the void. For 15 years, there had been no answer. "What did it say?" Governor Wright finally asked. Frank held up a small data pad for everyone to see. On it were 7 words that changed everything. "Hold position. Relief inbound. Dreadnought Squadron Epsilon arriving." "This has to be a mistake," said Council Member Owen, "or a cruel joke." "The quantum beacon uses Earth military encryption," John said quietly. "Only Earth forces would know the proper response codes." As the council argued about what the message meant, Benjamin rushed in with new data. "The gravitational distortions are increasing," he reported, "and they're moving. Whatever is out there, it's heading straight for us." Governor Wright looked at the faces around her. For the first time in years, she saw something dangerous in their eyes. Hope. "If this is real," she said, "if Earth has finally remembered us after all this time, then the Vraxians are about to have a very bad day." John finished, a small smile forming on his face. Outside the colony dome, Colonists pointed to the sky as strange lights began to appear among the stars, lights that grew brighter by the hour. 2 months earlier, on Earth, Admiral Claire Watson stood before the Defense Council. The large meeting room was filled with military officers and government officials. They had gathered to make a difficult decision. "The signal from New Hope Colony is real," Admiral Watson said. "Their quantum beacon has been active for 15 years, but we never picked it up until now because of the damage to our relay system during the war." General Alan Harris frowned. "We have only just rebuilt our forces after the Arcturus conflict. Many of our ships are still being repaired, and you want to send help to a colony that might not even exist anymore." "Not just any help," Admiral Watson said. "I want to deploy the Dreadnoughts." The room filled with whispers. The Dreadnought program had been Earth's greatest military achievement. 5 massive warships, each over 3 kilometers long, built during the darkest days of the war. They had never been used in battle before the war ended. "The Dreadnoughts have been dormant for years," said Defense Minister Paul Roberts. "Why risk our most powerful ships on a rescue mission that might be pointless?" "Because if New Hope has survived this long against Vraxian attacks, they deserve our help," Admiral Watson replied. "And because the Vraxians must learn that Earth protects its people, no matter how far from home they are." The debate lasted for hours. Some council members wanted to send a small scout force first. Others thought it was too risky to send any ships at all. In another part of Earth's orbital military headquarters, Lieutenant William Donovan worked late into the night. As tactical officer on the EDS Intrepid, one of the 5 dreadnoughts, he had been studying every piece of information Earth had on the Vraxian Empire. "Sir, I think I found something," he told his commander, Captain Andrew Wilson. "The Vraxians use a specific type of shield technology. Their ships rely on energy deflection rather than absorption. Our new phase cannons might be able to bypass their defenses completely." Captain Wilson studied the data. "Good work, Lieutenant. This could give us a critical advantage if we encounter their forces." The next morning, the Defense Council made their decision. Admiral Watson immediately began preparations. The 5 dreadnoughts, Intrepid, Vindicator, Resolute, Dauntless, and Guardian, were brought out of their orbital docks. Crews were assembled, weapons were loaded, and engines were fired up for the first time in years. Earth had managed to keep the mission a secret. Their communication networks had been rebuilt in ways the Vraxians couldn't detect. The enemy had no idea what was coming. On the EDS Vindicator, Captain Gregory Miller addressed his crew of 5,000 men and women. "Today we awaken these sleeping giants," he said, his voice carrying through the massive ship. "We go to the aid of our brothers and sisters who have been fighting alone for too long. The journey will take us 6 weeks at maximum speed. When we arrive, we will show the Vraxians the full might of Earth." Lieutenant Commander Samantha Powell, the ship's second-in-command, organized the crew into shifts. The massive engines powered up, creating a hum that ran through the entire vessel. "Hyperspace generators at full capacity," reported the chief engineer, Rick Davis, "ready to jump on your command." In formation, the 5 dreadnoughts moved away from Earth. They were awesome sights. Dark metal hulls stretching for kilometers, bristling with weapons, each carrying hundreds of fighter craft and enough firepower to level continents. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Captain Miller informed Watson, who was aboard the fleet flagship. "Then let's bring our people home," she replied. "Commence hyperspace jump." The 5 massive ships vanished in flashes of light, tearing holes in space itself as they began their journey to Proxima Centauri. In the weeks that followed, the ship's crews trained and prepared. Many had never seen real combat before. The older officers who had fought in the previous war told stories about the Vraxians, their tactics, their strengths, their weaknesses. Lieutenant Donovan continued to refine his tactical plans based on the data. "Their command ships always stay behind their main forces," he explained during a briefing. "If we can break through their front lines quickly, we might be able to target their leaders directly." As the fleet neared its destination, excitement and tension filled the massive vessels. They were about to make history, the first deployment of Earth's dreadnoughts in actual combat, bringing hope to those who thought they had been forgotten. Olivia Martinez hadn't slept in nearly 2 days. She and Benjamin watched their sensors as the strange readings grew stronger. The energy signatures were now unmistakable. Multiple hyperspace ruptures forming at the edge of the system, Benjamin announced, his voice shaking with excitement. These are bigger than anything I've ever seen in the records. Olivia called Governor Wright and the Colony Council to the science building. They crowded around the monitors just as the sensors went wild. Something's coming through, Olivia said. The space at the edge of the system suddenly tore open. Massive shapes emerged from the swirling vortex of energy. First one, then another, until 5 enormous vessels had appeared. Those can't be Earth ships, said Council Member Owen. They're too big. John Carpenter studied the readings with wide eyes. No, they're ours. Those are the dreadnoughts. The what? Asked Governor Wright. Before I left Earth, there were rumors about a new class of warships being built. Massive vessels that would change warfare forever. They called them dreadnoughts. I never thought I'd see one. The colony's communication system suddenly activated with a message on all channels. New Hope Colony, this is Lieutenant Commander Samantha Powell of the Earth Defense Ship Vindicator. We have received your distress signal and are here to provide assistance. Please respond. The room fell silent. After 15 years of isolation, hearing a voice from Earth left everyone speechless. Finally, Governor Wright stepped forward and pressed the response button. This is Governor Allison Wright of New Hope Colony. We're still here. We've been waiting for so long. Up in orbit, Commander Skthar of the Vraxian forces watched in disbelief as the Earth ships appeared. His officers scrambled to make sense of what they were seeing. Impossible, he hissed. Earth was crippled in the war. They should not have such vessels. Commander, these ships are 3 kilometers in length, reported his science officer. Our scans show weapon systems we have never encountered before. Their power signatures are off our measurement scales. Skuthar's mandibles clicked in agitation. Move our fleet into defensive formation. Call all our forces back from the surface. Send a message to the Imperial fleet requesting reinforcements. On the colony surface, people poured out of buildings to look at the sky. Even through the atmosphere, they could see the massive shapes of Earth's ships moving into position above their world. Many colonists wept at the sight. Earth fleet reports that they are deploying a defensive screen around our colony, John announced as he monitored communications. They're asking permission to land transport vessels. Within hours, the first Earth shuttles descended to the colony's landing area. Teams of soldiers in advanced armor secured the perimeter while medical personnel and engineers streamed out, bringing supplies and equipment. Lieutenant Commander Powell was among the first to step onto the colony soil. Governor Wright and the council waited to greet her. On behalf of New Hope Colony, welcome, said Governor Wright, her voice still unsteady. We had almost given up hope. The war disrupted our communications network, Powell explained. We only received your beacon signals recently. Earth has been rebuilding. As soon as we knew you were still here, Admiral Watson ordered a rescue mission immediately. John stepped forward. Those ships up there, they're really dreadnoughts. Powell nodded. 5 of them. The most powerful vessels humanity has ever built. And Captain Miller requests your presence aboard the Vindicator, Governor. He wants to discuss the situation with the Vraxians. A larger shuttle landed behind them. Unlike the others, this one was sleek and black, clearly designed for important personnel. Its doors opened to reveal Captain Gregory Miller and his senior officers. The captain was tall with a weathered face and gray at his temples. He walked directly to Governor Wright and offered his hand. Governor, I'm Captain Gregory Miller of the EDS Vindicator. Earth has not forgotten you. We're here to stay until your colony is secure. For the first time in 15 years, the people of New Hope truly believed they might survive. In orbit, the Earth dreadnoughts moved into a protective formation around the planet. Their massive hulls gleamed in the light of Proxima Centauri, casting long shadows across space. The Vraxian ships kept their distance, suddenly cautious in the face of such overwhelming power. "Captain," said one of Miller's officers as they prepared to return to the ship, "Vraxian vessels are regrouping at the edge of the system." Miller nodded. "Let them come. It's time they learned what happens when you threaten Earth's people." Daniel Foster had lived his entire life on New Hope Colony. At 16 years old, all he knew of Earth were stories told by the older colonists. Now he stared through the viewing window of a shuttle as it approached one of the massive Earth ships. "That's the EDS Vindicator," said engineer Laura Kennedy, who had been assigned to show Daniel and several other young colonists around. "She's the lead ship of the Dreadnought class." The shuttle seemed tiny next to the enormous vessel. The Vindicator stretched for 3 kilometers, its dark hull broken by weapon ports, hangar bays, and observation decks. Daniel pressed his face against the window, trying to take it all in. "It's so big," he whispered. "Each dreadnought carries over 5,000 crew members," Laura explained, "plus fighter squadrons, ground troops, and enough firepower to level continents. These ships were built at the end of the last war, but peace came before they could be deployed. This is their first real mission." The shuttle entered one of the smaller hangar bays. When the doors opened, Daniel and the others stepped into a world they had only dreamed about. The inside of the Dreadnought was a city in space. Clean corridors with bright lighting stretched in all directions. Crew members in crisp uniforms moved with purpose. "Follow me," Laura said. "Captain Miller has approved a tour of some of the ship's main areas." She led them through massive hallways to an observation deck where they could see the colony below. 3 of the other dreadnoughts were visible, positioned in a defensive formation around the planet. "Where's the 5th ship?" asked Daniel. "The EDS Guardian is on the far side of the planet," Laura answered. "Captain Miller wants to make sure the Vraxians can't make any surprise moves." Meanwhile, in the ship's tactical center, Captain Miller met with Governor Wright and John Carpenter. "The Vraxians have controlled this sector for too long," Miller said, pointing to a holographic map of the star system. "They believe the outer colonies are easy targets because they're far from Earth." "We've managed to survive," said Governor Wright. "But it's been hard. We've lost too many people." Captain Miller nodded grimly. "That ends now. Earth is expanding outward again after rebuilding from the war. New Hope won't stand alone anymore." He gestured to the hologram, which showed the positions of the Vraxian fleet at the edge of the system. "They're watching us," John observed, "waiting to see what we'll do next." "Let them wait," Miller replied. "Every hour gives us more time to strengthen your colony's defenses." On the engineering deck, Laura showed the colonists the heart of the massive ship, its power core. "This fusion reactor generates enough energy to power your entire colony for 100 years, she explained. "It drives our engines, powers our weapons, and sustains life support for the entire ship." Daniel stared at the glowing blue column that stretched up through multiple decks. "It's beautiful," he said. "And deadly in the wrong hands," Laura added. "The dreadnoughts were built to be both shields and swords. They protect our people, but they can also strike with incredible force when needed." In another part of the ship, Lieutenant William Donovan briefed his fighter pilots. Rows of men and women in flight suits listened attentively. "Vraxian fighters are faster than ours," he told them, "but our new Raptor craft have better shields and more firepower. Don't try to outrun them. Stand your ground and let them come to you." Back on the colony surface, people worked alongside Earth military engineers to strengthen their defenses. New shield generators were installed. Weapon emplacements were upgraded with Earth technology. In his command ship, Vraxian Commander Skthar received a message from the Imperial fleet. "Reinforcements are still 2 days away," his communications officer reported. "The High Command wants you to avoid direct confrontation until they arrive." Skthar clicked his mandibles in frustration. "These humans surprise us. Such ships should have been detected by our spies. Their arrival changes everything. Should we withdraw? Asked his second-in-command. No, Scathar replied. The Empire does not retreat. We will observe and plan. These dreadnoughts must have weaknesses we can exploit. As Proxima Centauri began to set, the massive Earth ships moved into a new formation. Their enormous shadows fell across the colony during the eclipse, darkening the sky. But for the first time in 15 years, this darkness brought not fear, but comfort to the people below. Governor Wright stood outside the colony dome, watching the silhouettes of humanity's greatest warships against the stars. They came, she said softly. They really came. The Vraxian reinforcements arrived sooner than expected. New hyperspace ruptures opened at the edge of the system, revealing a second fleet of alien warships. These vessels were larger than the first wave, with heavy armor and powerful weapons. Captain, we have multiple new contacts, reported the sensor officer on the Vindicator. At least 30 capital ships, and twice as many support vessels. Captain Miller studied the tactical display with a grim expression. They had more forces hidden nearby than we thought. Alert all ships. Defensive formation is no longer viable. On the colony surface, Dr. Kevin Phillips worked frantically in the medical center. Earth troops had brought advanced medical equipment, but wounded colonists and soldiers kept arriving as the battle intensified. We need more blood plasma, he told a nurse, and get those burn treatments ready. A team of Earth medics arrived with fresh supplies. We brought everything we could carry, said their leader. The transports can't land while the fighting is this close. Outside, explosions lit up the sky as the battle moved closer to the planet. The 5 dreadnoughts had been forced to split up to face threats coming from multiple directions. In orbit, Captain Miller made a difficult decision. We need to change tactics, he told his officers. We can't just protect the colony anymore. We need to take the fight to them. Sir, what about New Hope? Asked Lieutenant Commander Powell. We'll leave the Guardian in low orbit with a fighter screen, Miller replied. The other 4 dreadnoughts will engage the main Vraxian fleet. It's time to show them what these ships were really built for. The EDS Vindicator, Intrepid, Resolute, and Dauntless moved away from the colony, their engines blazing as they accelerated toward the enemy fleet. The EDS Guardian remained behind, providing cover for the people below. Commander Scathar watched the approaching Earth vessels with growing concern. They're abandoning their defensive position. Prepare all weapons. Target their lead ship. The Vraxian flagship fired first, a massive energy beam that struck the Vindicator head-on. The dreadnought's shields flared but held. Shield capacity at 80%, reported a damage control officer. No significant damage. Return fire, ordered Captain Miller. All ships, commence Operation Sunfall. The 4 dreadnoughts suddenly changed formation. They spread out in a wide pattern, surrounding a portion of the Vraxian fleet. Then, from weapon ports along their massive hulls, they fired a new type of weapon that the Vraxians had never seen before. Gravitational distortion beams lanced out from each Earth ship, striking the space between the Vraxian vessels. Instead of hitting the enemy directly, they warped the fabric of space itself. Vraxian ships were suddenly pulled toward each other, their own engines working against them. What is happening? Demanded Scathar as his ship lurched violently to one side. They're manipulating gravity, his science officer replied in horror. Our engines can't compensate. As the Vraxian ships struggled against the artificial gravitational pull, the dreadnought's conventional weapons opened fire. Laser arrays, plasma cannons, and missile systems all targeted the now vulnerable enemy vessels. Lieutenant Ryan Jackson led his fighters through the chaos. All wings, follow me. Target their engines while they're disoriented. In the colony, people watched through observation windows as the space above their world turned into a graveyard of destroyed ships. The dreadnoughts moved with surprising grace for vessels so large, their weapons creating beautiful and terrible patterns of destruction. Governor Wright stood beside John Carpenter in the command center. I never imagined Earth had such power, she whispered. "Those ships were built during our darkest hour," John replied, "when we thought we might lose everything." Commander Skthar saw his fleet being systematically destroyed. In desperation, he made one final decision. "All remaining ships, target the planet directly," he ordered. "If we cannot defeat these Earth vessels, we will make them pay by destroying what they came to protect." A dozen Vraxian ships broke away from the main battle, accelerating toward New Hope Colony with weapons charged. Captain Miller saw the threat immediately. "They're going for the colony. All ships, intercept those vessels." But the dreadnoughts were too far away, engaged with the main Vraxian fleet. Only the Guardian stood between the colony and destruction. "This is Captain Sarah Allen of the EDS Guardian," came a voice over the fleet comm. "We see them. Initiating emergency protocol. All hands brace for maximum power output." The Guardian's engines flared brighter than any ships should be able to survive. It moved with impossible speed, placing itself directly in the path of the incoming Vraxian attack force. The EDS Guardian moved with incredible speed, its massive hull glowing from the strain on its engines. Captain Sarah Allen knew she was pushing the dreadnought beyond safe limits, but the colony had to be protected at all costs. "Divert all power to forward shields and weapons," she ordered. "We need to stop those ships before they get in range of the colony." The Guardian positioned itself between the oncoming Vraxian vessels and New Hope. Its weapons fired in a continuous barrage, destroying 3 enemy ships immediately. But the others kept coming. On the Vindicator, Captain Miller watched the tactical display with growing concern. "The Guardian can't hold them all off. We need to finish this now." He opened a channel to all Earth ships. "All dreadnoughts, execute Operation Sunfall, Phase 2. The 4 massive ships suddenly changed position again. Instead of surrounding the enemy fleet, they formed a perfect line, their most powerful weapons aimed at the Vraxian command ship. "Target Skthar's vessel," Miller ordered. "Fire when ready." All 4 dreadnoughts fired their main cannons simultaneously. The combined energy beams merged into one blinding stream of light that cut through space like a surgeon's knife. When it struck the Vraxian flagship, the shields lasted less than a second before failing completely. Commander Skthar saw the end coming but had no time to escape. His mighty vessel, the pride of the Vraxian fleet, was torn apart by the combined power of Earth's greatest warships. With their commander gone, the remaining Vraxian ships began to retreat. Those attacking the colony turned away, no longer willing to sacrifice themselves without their leader's orders. "They're running," reported Lieutenant Ryan Jackson from his fighter. "Should we pursue?" "Negative," Captain Miller replied. "Let them go. Let them tell others what happens when you threaten Earth's people." In the colony, people emerged from shelters to see the aftermath. The space above their world was filled with debris from destroyed ships. But standing guard over them were 5 enormous Earth vessels, their hulls scarred from battle, but still intact. 3 days later, a memorial service was held in the colony's central plaza. Colonists and Earth military personnel gathered to honor those who had died, both in the final battle and during the 15 years of isolation. Governor Wright stood before the assembled crowd. "Today we remember those who are not here to see our victory. Those who defended this colony when we thought we stood alone in the universe. But we also celebrate new beginnings. Earth has returned to us, and we will never be forgotten again." Captain Miller spoke next. "Earth Defense Command has authorized a permanent military presence in this system. 2 dreadnoughts will remain here, along with support vessels and ground forces. New Hope Colony will become a forward base for humanity's expansion into this sector." Later that day, Olivia Martinez and Lieutenant Commander Powell worked in the science building, analyzing data from the battle. "Look at this," Olivia said, pointing to her screen. "Communications intercepts suggest the Vraxians are part of a larger alliance of species. They called for help from someone they refer to as the Collective." Powell nodded seriously. "We've heard rumors about that. Earth has been preparing for the possibility of facing a coalition of hostile species. That's one reason the Dreadnought program was created. Outside the colony dome, John Carpenter stood with Captain Miller, watching as Earth transport ships landed, bringing new colonists and supplies. "I still can't believe you came," John said. "After all this time." "Earth takes care of its own," Miller replied. "Always has, always will. We just needed time to rebuild after the war." High above them, the silhouettes of two dreadnoughts moved slowly across the sky. The Guardian and the Vindicator, now permanently assigned to protect New Hope. Their massive hulls caught the light of Proxima Centauri, gleaming like new stars. In orbit, Lieutenant Ryan Jackson led a training flight of new pilots from both Earth and the colony. As their fighters soared past the enormous dreadnoughts, he opened a channel to his trainees. "Remember what these ships represent," he told them. "No matter how far humans travel from Earth, no matter how distant the colony, we are never truly alone. And those who threaten us will learn what these Draxians learned. Earth will always come for its people, even across the stars." On the bridge of the Vindicator, Captain Miller looked down at the recovering colony and smiled. Against the backdrop of space, more transport ships were arriving. New Hope would grow stronger, humanity would expand further, and the dreadnoughts would stand guard, their shadows promising both protection for friends and consequences for enemies. The alarm sounded across all 5 dreadnoughts at the same time. On the bridge of the Vindicator, Captain Miller rushed to his command chair. "Report," he ordered. "Vraxian fleet is moving, sir," said the sensor officer. "They're forming attack patterns. Looks like they've decided not to wait for their reinforcements." Miller nodded. "They know we're strengthening the colony's defenses with each passing hour. Inform the other ships, battle stations." Throughout the massive vessel, crew members ran to their posts. Weapon systems powered up. Fighter pilots rushed to their ships. The other dreadnoughts moved into defensive positions around New Hope colony. Lieutenant Ryan Jackson climbed into his Raptor fighter. As squadron leader, he would lead the first response against the incoming Vraxian ships. "All pilots, this is Talon Leader," he said into his helmet comm. "Form up and prepare to launch." In the colony below, Governor Wright watched through the reinforced dome as the Earth ships moved. Their massive engines glowed blue against the blackness of space. "They're coming," John Carpenter said, looking at the tactical display. "The Vraxians are making their move." "Will our new defenses hold?" Governor Wright asked. "They're much stronger now," John replied. "But we should get everyone to the shelters just in case." The first wave of Vraxian attack ships entered the engagement zone. Their curved hulls gleamed with an alien light as they accelerated toward the planet. "Launch fighters," Captain Miller ordered. Hangar bay doors opened across all 5 dreadnoughts. Hundreds of Raptor fighters poured out, forming into attack groups. Lieutenant Jackson led his squadron toward the incoming enemy. "Here they come," he told his pilots. "Remember your training. Don't try to match their speed. Let them come to you and use your superior weapons." The two forces met in the space above New Hope. Bright flashes of weapons fire lit up the darkness. Vraxian fighters were faster, darting between the human ships. But just as Lieutenant Donovan had predicted, Earth's new fighters had stronger shields and more powerful weapons. "They're breaking through in Sector 4, reported a tactical officer on the Vindicator. "Move the Dauntless to intercept," Captain Miller ordered. "Keep them away from the colony." The EDS Dauntless, third in the line of dreadnoughts, moved into position. Its massive hull absorbed punishment that would have destroyed smaller ships. Weapon ports opened along its length, revealing cannons larger than many buildings in the colony. "Main batteries firing," announced the weapons officer. Great beams of energy lanced out from the dreadnought. Where they struck, Vraxian ships simply ceased to exist, vaporized by the incredible power. On his command ship, Scathar watched in horror as the Earth vessels demonstrated their true capabilities. "These weapons," he hissed. "How is this possible?" "Their technology has advanced far beyond our intelligence reports," his science officer replied. "Those energy weapons are bypassing our shields completely. Launch the second attack wave, Zcathar ordered. Focus on the colony. If we can threaten the humans on the ground, perhaps these ships will hold back their full power. In the colony's communications center, Nicole Winters monitored Vraxian transmissions. She had been a linguist before coming to New Hope, and the Earth fleet had provided her with updated translation software. They're planning to attack the colony directly, she reported urgently. They're trying to force our ships to hold back. Captain Miller received the warning immediately. Not going to happen, he said. Implement Operation Hammerfall. All ships, defensive formation Delta. The 5 dreadnoughts moved with surprising speed for vessels so large. They formed a protective screen above the colony, their massive hulls creating an impenetrable barrier between the Vraxians and the people below. Sir, if we maintain this position, we can't use our main weapons effectively, his tactical officer warned. I know, Miller replied, but protecting the colony is our priority. Lieutenant Jackson's fighters will have to handle the attack force while we shield the colonists. Ryan Jackson heard the order through his comm. You heard the captain, he told his pilots. We're the offense now. All squadrons, form up on me. We're going hunting. The Earth fighters surged forward in a coordinated attack, punching through the Vraxian formations. Behind them, the 5 massive dreadnoughts held position above New Hope, their enormous shadows covering the entire colony in darkness. But this time, it was a darkness that meant safety. Look at them, Governor Wright said as she watched the battle through the dome. They came across the stars for us. After all this time, Earth remembered.